The last guardian of echoes, the melody of the Oneiric sea. Good evening, and welcome to this refuge at the edge of time. Have you ever felt the echo of a dream that fades at dawn? A distant melody that your heart recognizes, but your mind cannot grasp? Today, on the Corner of Lost Stories, I will take you to a place beyond the maps. I will take you to the coast of whispers, where a solitary lighthouse guides not ships, but longings. There lived Elara, the last guardian of a lineage that tuned the tides of the Oneiric world. Her lighthouse, instead of a beam of light, projected a vibration, a pure, crystalline note that spread across the waters. It guided not the sailors of the waking world, but the navigators of dreams, wandering souls in the vast ocean of the subconscious. Every night, Elara ascended the spiral staircase, its stone steps holding the memory of millennia. At the top, there was no Fresnel lens, but a giant conch shell, polished by tides of time immemorial. It was the conch of sighs, and only Elara knew its song. She would press her lips to its cold rim and blow a melody her grandmother had taught her, a lullaby for the world's soul. The note traveled, invisible, a wave of solace in the vastness. Dreams that had gone astray, frightened by a nightmare, or weighed down by the sleeper's sorrow, would hear the call. They were like small, iridescent spheres of light, twinkling adrift on a deep, nocturnal sea. Elara's melody was their compass, the silver thread that guided them back to the mind that had created them. Thanks to her work, the small coastal town of Ethil slept in peace for generations. Its inhabitants would awaken with a sense of purpose, with the fresh memory of adventures and the warmth of Oneiric reunions. It was a solitary job, whose only witness was the moon. If you have ever found comfort in the solitude of the night, please leave a small light in the form of a like to keep Elara company in her vigil. She did not long for companionship. Her communion was with the echoes of the human heart. She felt the yearning of the artist, who could not find their muse, the anguish of the lover separated by distance, the hope of the child imagining new worlds. All of them sailed upon her sea, and she was their light-keeper. But one night, something shifted in the tide. The air grew heavy, dense, charged with the static of fear. Elara felt a cold that came not from the sea wind, but from the depths of the Oneiric ocean. As she looked out, she saw that the sea did not reflect the stars. It was a canvas of absolute, opaque blackness. From the depths, a shadow began to rise, not a common nightmare, but something older and vaster. It was the malaise, an entity born of collective apathy, of abandoned hopes and discarded futures. It had no definite form. It was a void that absorbed light and sound. The small, luminous dreams began to flicker, to shrink in fear at its presence. The malaise did not devour them. It simply extinguished them with its proximity, like a flame deprived of oxygen. Elara ran to the conch of sighs and played her ancestral melody. But the sound, for the first time, was fragile and trembling. The note traveled, but instead of guiding the dreams, it seemed to be absorbed by the growing silence that emanated from the shadow. Panic, a feeling foreign to her, tried to take root in her heart. She looked toward Ethel and could feel it. A restless sleep, nightmares beginning to seep into the minds of the villagers. If the malaise reached the shore, the town would not only stop dreaming, it would stop hoping, stop longing, stop living. The melody of her ancestors, a song of comfort, was not enough to combat an affliction so profound. She needed a new song, one that would not just guide, but fight, one that would not just console, but ignite. She descended from the lighthouse, a decision no guardian had made during the night in centuries. The beach was strangely silent. The waves broke without their usual roar, as if afraid to awaken the shadow. Elara closed her eyes, searching within herself for a note she had never needed before. She remembered her mother's laugh, a sound like silver bells. She remembered the pride in her grandfather's eyes when he entrusted her with the lighthouse. She remembered the first ray of sunlight she ever saw, a golden promise on the horizon. But these were memories of peace, of serene love. They were not a weapon. The malaise advanced, and with it, a whisper crept into Elara's mind. It's useless. Everything ends. Oblivion is the only rest. The cold enveloped her, and for a moment she felt the weight of despondency. Why fight? Night always gives way to day, but it always returns. Sorrow is the soul's high tide. She almost gave in. She almost let the whisper convince her. But then a different memory surfaced, one nearly erased by time. She saw herself as a little girl on this very beach. She had built a sandcastle, the most magnificent her imagination could conceive. An unexpected wave had toppled it, undoing her work in an instant. She remembered the sting of tears in her eyes, the frustration, the small despair of childhood. But she also remembered what she did next. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, took a deep breath of the salty air, and began to build again. Not with sadness, but with a silent defiance, with a stubbornness born of the purest hope. That was the note. Not joy, not love, not peace. It was the indomitable will to begin again. The hope that is born not of certainty, but of defiance against despair. It was not a melody that could be played. It was one that had to be felt. She returned to the top of the lighthouse, the shadow now licking at the base of the tower. The stone vibrated with an unnatural cold. She ignored the conch of sighs. This time, the music would not come from an object, but from herself. She stood at the edge of the railing, facing the immense nothingness, and she did not blow. She sang Dot. It was not a song of words, but of pure emotion. The first tone was low and trembling, the note of her acknowledged fear. The second was sharp and mournful, the cry for all that is gone. The malaise seemed to grow, feeding on that sorrow. But then Elara introduced the third note. The memory of the little girl on the beach. It was a clear, firm, and defiant note. The note of resilience. The new melody began to weave itself together. It was a bittersweet song. It acknowledged the pain, the anguish, the inevitability of the end. But for every note of sorrow, it answered with one of courage. For every measure of darkness, it countered with a stubborn glimmer of light. The song rose, no longer from her throat, but from her very soul. The entire lighthouse began to resonate with it, not with light, but with a palpable vibration of pure will. The malaise stopped. The silence it projected was shattered for the first time. The small drifting dreams that had cowered felt the new music. Dot. It was not a lullaby calling them home. It was a battle hymn inviting them to shine. One by one, they began to pulse with greater strength. A child's dream of flying became a comet of blue fire. An old man's longing to see his love again transformed into a supernova of golden light. A poet's inspiration burst forth like a galaxy of shimmering words. The Oneiric sea filled with lights that did not flee, but advanced. The malaise recoiled, hissing. It could not comprehend. Hope born of defiance was a concept alien to its nature, as a void. Elara sang louder, her feet firm on the stone, her voice uniting all the sleepers of Ethel in a single act of resistance. The shadow, overcome not by a greater power, but by an unbreakable conviction, began to dissolve. Dot was not destroyed, for apathy can never be completely annihilated. It simply retreated to the abyssal depths, to await another age of despair. When the first ray of dawn touched the horizon, the Oneiric sea was once again a mirror of stars, populated by thousands of dancing dreams. Elara, exhausted but fulfilled, ended her song with one last soft note, a note of promise. That morning, the people of Ethel awoke in a way they could not remember. They didn't just feel rested, they felt brave. The baker tried a new recipe he had always been afraid to attempt. The librarian began to write her own book. Two neighbors who hadn't spoken in years greeted each other with a genuine smile. They didn't know why, but they felt as if they had fought a great battle during the night and had won. High in her lighthouse, Elara watched the smoke rising from the chimneys, each wisp a small sign of life and hope. She knew the Malays would one day return, but now she had a new song to teach the next generation of guardians. A melody that did not deny the darkness, but taught how to light a candle in the midst of it. Elara's story teaches us that the most powerful hope is not the one that ignores despair, but the one born from looking it directly in the eye and choosing, despite everything, to build the sandcastle again. What melody would you use to guide your own dreams in the darkness? And what castle would you build again, no matter how many waves try to knock it down? Tell us in the comments. If this story resonated with you, leave a light in the form of a like and subscribe, ringing the bell so that the echo of our tales always finds its way to you. Until next time.